when care becomes the connection. Before anyone realized what it was. Care is rarely dramatic. It doesn't arrive with declarations or grand moments. It doesn't demand to be seen. Most of the time it exists quietly, so quietly that people mistake it for coincidence. First it feels ordinary, almost forgettable, and then one day you realize that the ordinary has become essential. That's how this began. Not with attraction, not with intention, but with care. The small things that went unnoticed. In the beginning there were only small gestures. Nothing anyone would point at and say, "This means something." A reminder given gently. A pause to wait for the other to finish speaking. An instinctive glance to check if everything was okay. These moments passed quickly, blending into the background of everyday life. They weren't saved. They weren't highlighted. But they were consistent. And consistency is where care quietly starts to take root. When attention turned into a habit. Care deepens when attention becomes effortless. They didn't need to remind themselves to notice. They just did. A change in mood didn't go unseen. A tired expression didn't get ignored. Silence didn't feel empty, it felt informative. Without realizing it, they had begun reading each other. Not analyzing, not questioning, just understanding. And understanding, when repeated enough times, becomes a bond. The safety of being held without touch. Care isn't always physical. Sometimes it shows up as restraint, patience, as knowing when not to speak. They learned how to hold space for each other, emotionally, mentally, without pressure. One could be overwhelmed without being rushed. One could be quiet without being questioned. One could be distant without being accused. That kind of emotional safety changes people, softens them, steadies them. It allows them to breathe. When protection became instinctive, care eventually turns into protection. Not the possessive kind, but the gentle kind. The kind that steps in quietly. The kind that shields without drawing attention. The kind that prioritizes comfort over pride. They didn't discuss it. They didn't plan it. Simply happened. And the more it happened, the clearer it became. This wasn't obligation, this was instinct. The moment care stopped being one-sided. True connection forms when care is returned. Not equally, but naturally. One reached. The other responded. One noticed. The other appreciated. It wasn't transactional. No one was keeping score. Care moved freely between them, adjusting to what each needed in that moment. That's when it stopped being kindness. That's when it became connection. Silence that felt full. They learned how to exist together without noise. Not every moment needed conversation. Not every pause needed explanation. Silence became comfortable, familiar, shared. In that silence, they found understanding deeper than words could provide. They weren't ignoring each other. They were resting together. When emotions were handled with care, disagreements didn't escalate. Misunderstandings didn't become wounds. They handled each other carefully, as if aware that carelessness could break something precious. They listened. They adjusted. They apologized when needed. Not because they were perfect, but because they valued what they were building. Care taught them how to stay. The way stress revealed everything. Pressure has a way of exposing truth. In stressful moments, people either turn inward or they reach out. They reached for each other. Calming presence. Steady voice. A grounding touch. When the world felt demanding, they became gentle. And that gentleness became their anchor. When being understood felt like relief. There's a special kind of relief that comes from not having to explain yourself. They didn't need to translate emotions. They didn't need to justify reactions. Being understood felt immediate, natural. Felt like someone finally spoke the same emotional language. How care turned into trust. Trust wasn't built on promises or assurances. It was built on repetition. On knowing someone would show up again. On knowing they wouldn't disappear when things became complicated. On knowing vulnerability would be met with respect. Trust grew quietly, reinforced by every gentle response. When connection became undeniable. At some point it became impossible to ignore. Not because anything changed dramatically, but because nothing changed at all. Care was still there. Attention was still there. Comfort was still there. And that constancy made everything clear. This wasn't situational. This wasn't temporary. This was real. Wyatt never felt heavy. The most remarkable thing about their connection was its lightness. It didn't demand. It didn't control. It didn't overwhelm. Supported. Steadied. Softened. Care didn't weigh them down, it carried them. When being together felt natural. There was no effort in being close. No overthinking. No hesitation. Togetherness felt like alignment. Not adjustment. Like two rhythms settling into the same pace. The connection that didn't need proof. They didn't need validation. They didn't need confirmation. The connection existed whether anyone saw it or not. It lived in private moments. In mutual awareness. In quiet consistency. That's why it endured. Care as the strongest foundation. Love is often portrayed as intense. As consuming. As dramatic. But what lasts is care. Care that notices. Care that listens. Care that protects without possessing. Care that stays. Epilogue. When care becomes everything. In the end, care didn't just support the connection. It was the connection. It shaped it. Strengthened it. Sustained it. And that's why what they shared felt different. Not because it was louder. But because it was truer. When care becomes the connection. Nothing else is needed.